It started with something so small, something I almost overlooked. A bottle. Just an ordinary pill bottle tucked halfway under the passenger seat of my husband's car. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was vitamins, maybe something for his health. But then I saw the label, and my heart sank. They weren't his. They weren't even the kind of pills a man would need. They were pregnancy pills. And in that moment, I felt the ground shift beneath me. I remember holding that bottle in my hand, staring at it, trying to make sense of the lies I'd been living with. Questions spun through my head faster than I could catch them. Who were they for? Why was he carrying them? And most of all, what did this mean about us? About me? That night, I realized the man I trusted the most wasn't just hiding something. He was destroying me in ways I never imagined. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I swallowed the pain and hid my discovery. But inside, I already knew. This was the beginning of something dark, something that would change everything. And let me ask you this. What would you have done if you found out like I did? If you had asked me a year ago what my marriage was like, I would have smiled and told you it was everything I ever wanted. On the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. People would tell us all the time, "You two are made for each other." My friends envied me, my family adored him. And I really thought I'd won at life. My husband was charming in that effortless way that made everyone around him feel special. He remembered birthdays. He pulled out chairs at dinners. And when we'd go to family gatherings, he was the one helping my mom in the kitchen or fixing something my dad couldn't get to. He wasn't just my husband. He was everyone's favorite person. And for a long time, I believed he was mine too. But if you've ever lived with someone day in and day out, you know the tiny cracks don't show themselves in public. They whisper to you at night, in the quiet, when no one else is around. That's when I started noticing things. At first, they were small, harmless things you brush off. He'd stay a little later at work, saying he had urgent deadlines. Or he'd step out of the room to take a phone call. It didn't alarm me because, well, we trusted each other. That's what marriage is built on, right? Trust. But then, those small moments started stringing together. His phone, for example. He used to leave it lying around on the couch or the kitchen counter without a second thought. But now, it was always in his pocket. Always locked. And when he was scrolling, if I walked by, he'd tilt the screen away, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. I told myself not to read too much into it. After all, everyone deserves a little privacy. And marriage isn't about policing one another. I kept convincing myself that everything was fine, that we were fine. Except, something inside me knew we weren't. He became distant in ways that were harder to ignore. The way he'd avoid eye contact during dinner, the way conversations that used to flow effortlessly now felt like pulling teeth. And the intimacy, the warmth that used to be second nature between us, was fading, replaced by a kind of practiced politeness. But here's the thing about denial, it's comfortable. It's easier to tell yourself, this is just a phase, than to face the possibility that the person you love is slipping away, or worse, hiding something. So I clung to the illusion. I played my role as the devoted wife, smiling at family events, laughing at his jokes, pretending not to feel the sting when he pulled away just slightly when I reached for his hand. To everyone else, we were the perfect picture of a happy marriage, and I let them believe it. But behind closed doors, when I lay awake at night staring at the ceiling, doubt gnawed at me. I would ask myself the same quiet questions over and over. Why is he so distant? Who is he texting? What changed? I wanted answers, but I was terrified of what those answers might be. Looking back now, I realize I already knew. The signs were there, painted in bold red strokes across the canvas of our life together. I just didn't want to see them. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. And the truth, it has a way of breaking everything you thought was real. Little did I know, the illusion I was clinging to was about to shatter in the most brutal way possible. The thing about secrets is, they never stay buried forever. No matter how carefully someone hides them, they have a way of slipping through the cracks. And with my husband, it started with the little things, the kind of things most people would dismiss. I remember one evening, we were sitting on the couch, and his phone rang. Normally, he'd just answer it in front of me, no hesitation. But that night, he stood up, walked into the hallway, and lowered his voice. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear the tone. Nervous. Careful. Like someone trying not to be overheard. When I asked who it was afterward, he smiled, almost too quickly, and said, "Just work. Work." That word suddenly became his shield. Every late-night text, every call he took outside, every evening he claimed he had to stay back at the office. All of it was wrapped up neatly in that one excuse. And for a while, I swallowed it. Because I wanted to believe him. Because I wanted my marriage to be what I thought it was. But then, the receipts started showing up. Small crumpled slips of paper tucked into his coat pockets or left forgotten in the car's glove compartment. They weren't for groceries or gas. They were for restaurants I hadn't been to, bars I didn't know he'd visited, little purchases that didn't fit into the rhythm of our shared life. When I asked him about them, he always had a quick explanation. Oh, that was a client dinner. I picked up the tab for a coworker. His answers came too easily, like he'd rehearsed them. And maybe he had. The turning point came one afternoon when I borrowed his car. I was digging around for some spare change in the console when I found them. Small blister packs of pills tucked inside an old receipt envelope. At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed they were vitamins or maybe something for stress. My husband had been working late, after all, and who doesn't pop a supplement now and then? But something about them bothered me. Maybe it was the way they were shoved deep into the envelope, hidden like they weren't meant to be found. Or maybe it was the label I couldn't ignore. I held one of the packs closer, and the word on the foil made my stomach turn. Pregnancy. Pregnancy pills. I blinked, certain I was misreading. Why would my husband, my healthy, 30-something husband, be carrying around pills meant for women? At first, I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe they belonged to his coworker. Maybe he was holding them for a friend. Maybe. Maybe anything that wasn't what my gut was screaming. But the thought wouldn't leave me. It circled my mind, over and over, louder each time. Why would a man need pregnancy pills? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at him as he slept beside me, his chest rising and falling peacefully, like he hadn't just turned my world upside down with a single hidden envelope. I studied his face, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, and suddenly he felt like a stranger. I wanted to wake him up right there, shove the pills in his face, and demand answers. But a part of me was terrified of what those answers might be. What if he laughed and brushed it off? What if he turned it back on me, accused me of snooping, of being paranoid? Or worse, what if he told me the truth, and it was exactly what I feared? So I stayed quiet. But my silence didn't erase the questions. It didn't erase the gnawing doubt that clawed at me every time he left the house or checked his phone with that secret little smile. The pills had opened a door I couldn't close, and behind it was a truth I wasn't ready to face. And yet, whether I wanted to or not, I was already on the path. Because once suspicion plants itself, it doesn't shrink. It grows. It grows until it takes over everything. I didn't know it then, but finding those pills was only the beginning. The real storm was still coming. I tried to ignore it. I told myself the pills didn't mean anything, that maybe I was overthinking, letting paranoia ruin a perfectly good marriage. But deep down, I knew, and once suspicion takes root, it doesn't just sit quietly in the back of your mind. It grows like a weed, choking out every moment of peace. So I started watching him more closely. The way he always turned his phone face down on the table. How he guarded it like it was some priceless treasure, even carrying it into the bathroom. He had never done that before. One night, while he showered, I did something I swore I'd never do. I picked up his phone. My hands trembled so badly I could barely type in the passcode, but when the screen unlocked, I felt a wave of nausea. Messages. Dozens of them. None of them from coworkers or old friends. They were from one number, saved without a name. And the words, they weren't work-related. They weren't casual. They were intimate. I miss you. Don't forget to take what I gave you. We'll figure this out. Just don't say anything yet. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. My husband, wasn't just hiding receipts or late nights. He was hiding another life. I didn't even realize tears were running down my face until I heard the shower stop. My heart nearly stopped, too. I quickly set the phone back on the nightstand, wiping my eyes, trying to look normal. But inside, I was broken open. The final blow came a few days later. He thought I was asleep when he slipped out into the hallway to take a call. But something told me to follow quietly, to press myself against the wall and listen. And that's when I heard it. His voice, soft but firm. You need to take the pills. We can't risk this. Not now. Just trust me. It'll be better this way. There was silence. Then a faint laugh from the other side. A woman's voice. My blood ran cold. That was the moment it clicked. The pills. They weren't vitamins. And they weren't harmless. They were pregnancy pills, given to his girlfriend. Not just to hide her pregnancy, but to end it quietly. Without me ever knowing, I nearly collapsed right there in the hallway. Betrayal was one thing, but realizing that the man I loved, the man who promised me honesty and partnership, was capable of something so cruel. It shattered me in a way I can't put into words. I stumbled back to the bedroom, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. My mind was spinning. Questions screamed inside me. How long had this been going on? How many lies had he told me? How many nights had he walked out of our home and into hers? I looked at him differently after that night. Every smile felt fake. Every kiss felt forced. His touch made my skin crawl. And yet, I had to keep pretending. Pretending I didn't know. Pretending I wasn't crumbling inside. Because I wasn't ready. Not yet. To show my cards. You see, I'm not the kind of woman who explodes in the moment. I don't scream and throw things. No, I plan. And if he thought I was going to sit quietly while he destroyed me and played house with another woman, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. But in those first few days, all I could do was hold it in. Smile at family dinners. Wash the dishes. Go through the motions of being his wife while a storm of rage and grief brewed inside me. And as I stared at him across the table, listening to him laugh with that same charm that once won me over, one thought burned in my mind like fire. He thinks he's clever. He thinks I'll never find out. But I already know. I took a deep breath, and in that moment, I made a decision. If he wanted to play games with my life, then I'd play too, but on my terms. And here's where I want to ask you. What would you have done if you found out like I did? Would you confront him right away, or would you wait and plan like I chose to? Because trust me, the plan I was about to set in motion would change everything. After that night, I learned how quickly a life can split into two lanes, the one everyone sees, bright and tidy, and the one you walk alone in, full of plans and poison. I decided, quietly, that I would live in both lanes at once. So I put on my best face. At breakfast, I smiled as if nothing had happened. I made his coffee the exact way he liked it. Too strong, a splash of milk. Then sat across from him and listened to him talk about nonsense, the copier at work that kept jamming, the neighbor's dog that wouldn't stop barking. I nodded. I laughed at the right moments. I let him think I was the same woman who had tucked his shirt into his collar for a job interview 5 years ago. But underneath those little domestic rituals, I started collecting pieces of the other life. Quietly, carefully. I didn't storm out and scream. I didn't smash anything. I documented. Screenshots of late-night texts. Photos of hotel receipts that didn't match the stories he told. Little things he left behind. An unfamiliar lipstick stain on a napkin in his jacket pocket. A coffee cup lid with someone else's name in his car's folder. I kept a folder on my phone and another one backed up to my email. Dated and labeled, because if you're going to be hurt, at least let the hurt be organized. I learned to be helpful in ways that made him drop his guard. I offered to iron his shirts, which got me access to pockets and soft, private places where people leave traces. I cooked his favorite dinner the nights he came home late. I asked about work meetings in a casual, concerned way that sounded affectionate, not accusatory. I let him nestle into my shoulder on the couch, while the TV murmured background noise. Those small acts were my camouflage. There were moments I almost busted when the rage rose hot and quick behind my ribs. Once, when I found a lipstick case shoved under the passenger seat, my hands shook so hard I thought he might see. But I breathed, folded the item into a napkin, and slid it into my pocket like it was nothing. That's the thing about pretending practice dulls the edges. You become very good at smiling while pieces of your world are rearranged without your permission. I started writing notes to myself, short reminders of dates and names, impressions I didn't want to lose in the fog. At night, after he had gone to bed, I'd sit with his messages pulled up on the screen and reread every word, looking for patterns, for the moment their language changed from friendly to intimate. I saved voicemails. I emailed things to myself at work. I even made a photocopy of a receipt once, because paper still feels more real than pixels. All of it felt transgressive, a slow theft of privacy that I justified in the name of truth. I told myself the truth would set me free, that the pieces I gathered would be my armor when I finally decided to act. But while I cataloged betrayal, I also performed tenderness. I brushed his hair out of his eyes when he dozed on the couch. I left post-it notes on the fridge. Love you? In the same handwriting I'd used for years. I kissed his forehead before he left for work, and he kissed my cheek back, oblivious. That double life was exhausting. It was cinematic in the worst way, the smiling actress in the daylight, the detective mapping clues at midnight. And still, every small kindness I gave him felt like a small wound I inflicted on myself. Playing along was a choice I made with full eyes. I wanted evidence. Yes, but I also wanted him to keep thinking I was the woman he'd married until I decided otherwise. So I kept gathering. I kept smiling. I kept waiting. What would you have done in my place? Ran to confront him, or collected proof and planned every step? Tell me below. Because I needed people to see the face I was showing the world while my heart quietly plotted something much darker. By the time I had gathered enough evidence, the anger inside me wasn't wild anymore. It wasn't screaming or breaking plates. It was calm, calculated sharp like glass. I didn't want to just leave him. I wanted him to feel what I felt. To know that the mask he wore so confidently was about to be ripped away in front of everyone who thought he was perfect. The first step was quiet. I called a lawyer. Not because I was ready to file anything just yet, but because I needed to understand the battlefield. What was in my name? What was in his? What could be frozen? What could be taken? The lawyer explained things I hadn't even thought about. Bank accounts I didn't realize he had tucked away, debts he'd hidden under my nose, assets that could shift if I moved too late. I took notes. Every detail became part of the plan. The second step was riskier. I reached out to her, his girlfriend, the woman he thought was hidden in the shadows. She wasn't hard to find. His arrogance made sure of that. A single receipt led me to a cafe, a single message led me to her Instagram. And before long, I had her in front of me, sipping a latte, unaware that I was the wife she was helping to betray. I didn't scream. I didn't throw water in her face. Instead, I smiled. I asked questions. And within minutes, she spilled enough to confirm everything. She wasn't the villain in her version of the story. He had promised her things, fed her lies, painted me as cold, distant, uninterested. Typical. But when I mentioned the pills, when I asked her if she even knew what he had been slipping into her life, her face changed. She didn't. She thought they were vitamins, just like I had, until the truth slipped out. That moment gave me the leverage I needed. She wasn't my ally, not exactly, but she wasn't his anymore either. And sometimes, the enemy of your enemy can hand you the perfect weapon. So I staged it. Carefully. I invited his family for dinner, his parents, his sister, even a couple of close friends. He walked into the dining room that night thinking it was a celebration, a warm little family evening. The table was set, the food was hot, the wine was poured. He was smiling, proud of himself, basking in the glow of his double life. And then, I presented the truth, not by yelling, not by crying, but by placing a neat little folder on the table. Receipts, screenshots, messages, photos, all laid out like evidence in a courtroom. And then, the final blow her. The girlfriend. She walked in, pale and shaking, holding the bottle of pills he had given her. The room froze. His mother gasped. His father's face turned red. He stammered, reaching for explanations that collapsed as fast as he made them. And me. I sat there quietly, watching his world collapse in front of the people whose approval he cherished most. That was the revenge. Not breaking him in private, but exposing him in the one place he thought he was untouchable. His family's eyes. By the end of the night, he wasn't just a cheater. He was a liar, a manipulator, a man who had tried to control a woman's body without her even knowing. And every single mask he wore slipped off under the weight of the silence in that room. That's when I knew I had won. The night of the confrontation didn't explode in screaming like you'd see in a movie. It was quieter, colder. And somehow, that silence cut deeper than any shouting ever could. I waited until everyone had eaten, until the wine had softened their guard, until he leaned back in his chair with that smug little smile he always wore when he thought he had life under control. That's when I slid the folder onto the table. At first, he laughed. He actually laughed, thinking it was some silly surprise or a joke. But the second he saw the first receipt, the screenshots of messages, the pharmacy bag stapled to the front, the color drained from his face. He froze mid-breath, fork still in his hand, eyes darting between me and the evidence piling up in front of him. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. His father muttered something sharp under his breath. And then the door opened. She walked in. The girlfriend. Pale, nervous, clutching the bottle of pills like it was burning her fingers. She didn't need to say a word. The look on her face said it all. That's when the room shattered. His mother demanded to know if it was true. His sister pushed back from the table, disgust written across her face. And the girlfriend, voice trembling, asked him one question. Why didn't you just tell me what they were? The silence after that was unbearable. He opened his mouth, tried to spin another story, but the weight of so many lies pressed down on him until even he couldn't keep up. He begged. He actually begged. First her, then me, then his parents, anyone who would listen. He swore it was a mistake, that he hadn't meant to hurt anyone, that he was under stress, that he loved me, that he loved her. But the more words spilled out, the more pathetic he sounded. And me. I sat there calm. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I simply reached into my bag and pulled out the final nail in his coffin divorce papers, already drawn up and signed on my end. The room went dead silent again. I pushed them across the table and said quietly, "You thought you were in control. You thought you could play 2 lives at once. But you just lost both." He collapsed back in his chair, head in his hands, muttering, "Please, please, don't do this." But I was already gone. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally, completely. I was no longer his wife. I was no longer the woman who believed in him. I was just the woman he underestimated. The financial ruin came later. Once the lawyer froze the accounts, once his family pulled their support, once the truth trickled into his workplace. The social embarrassment, though, that came instantly. His own girlfriend walked out of the house that night, refusing to look back. His parents couldn't even meet his eyes. And I made sure every single person who once admired him knew exactly who he really was. By the time the papers were finalized, he had lost everything that gave him power: his reputation, his money, his image. All of it gone. Not because I screamed, but because I planned. Because I waited. Because I made sure the truth came out in the one way he couldn't bury it. And as I walked away from that house for the last time, I felt lighter. The betrayal had burned me, yes, but the revenge? That set me free. Walking out of that house, papers in hand, I expected to feel hollow. I thought the weight of everything, the lies, the betrayal, the humiliation, would crush me once the adrenaline wore off. But instead, I felt something else, something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. For so long, I had been living in the shadow of his double life without even realizing it. Every late night, every secretive phone call, every unexplained expense, those weren't my failures as a wife, they were his failures as a man. The moment I accepted that truth, the chains around me broke. My husband, or rather, my ex-husband, spiraled quickly, without me covering for him, without his girlfriend to prop up his ego, and without the financial cushion he had once bragged about. He crumbled. The girlfriend disappeared from his life within weeks. Nobody knew if she left town or simply wanted to erase him from her memory. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. She was betrayed too, just in a different way. I, on the other hand, started rebuilding. At first, it was the small things: sleeping through the night without wondering if he was lying beside me or lying to me, cooking meals just for myself and realizing I didn't have to measure my happiness by someone else's appetite. Slowly, the house stopped feeling haunted by his presence, and it started feeling like mine again. Of course, the whispers in the community lingered. People asked questions, some out of curiosity, some out of pity. But here's the thing about betrayal: it doesn't destroy you. It reshapes you. It teaches you just how strong you really are. I stopped looking at myself as a victim of his choices. Instead, I started seeing myself as the woman who refused to stay broken. Every scar he left behind became proof that I survived. And every time I saw him, pathetic, hollow, stripped of everything he once bragged about, I knew I had made the right choice. Sometimes late at night, I'd catch myself remembering the look on his face when the truth came out. That mixture of shock, fear, and desperation, and I won't lie, a part of me still savors it. Not because I enjoy cruelty, but because it was the first time he was forced to face the reality he had tried so hard to bury. And yet, even after all of that, I knew one thing for certain: my story wasn't over. Because revenge isn't always one moment. It isn't always a single confrontation or one dramatic reveal. Sometimes it's slower. Sometimes it's about watching the person who wronged you slowly unravel, knowing they brought it all on themselves. So when people ask me if that night, the night of the big reveal, was the end of my revenge, I just smile. Because the truth is, it wasn't the end at all. It was only the beginning. And if you think my story ended with signed papers and his downfall, you'd be wrong. So now you've heard my story. I laid everything bare: the betrayal, the lies, and the moment I finally decided I wasn't going to let someone else destroy me. But now I have to ask you, what do you think? Was I too harsh with the way I handled things, or do you think I wasn't harsh enough? Some people might say I should have just walked away quietly, but others tell me that giving him a taste of his own medicine was the only real justice. What about you? If you were in my shoes, if you caught your partner giving pregnancy pills to his secret girlfriend, what would you have done? Would you have confronted him immediately, or would you have planned your revenge the way I did? I really want to hear your thoughts, because every story like this sparks a different reaction. And trust me, I read every single comment. You'd be surprised how much your words mean when you've lived through something like this. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me bring you more real life stories that will keep you hooked until the very end. And tell me, where are you watching from? I love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. Until next time, remember, betrayal doesn't break you. It teaches you who you really are.